Hoo boy, another tier list. Here's hoping everyone agrees with me and... Oh, come on, not again! After a lengthy and tumultuous year, Atlus finally got around to gracing us with our promised savior. A direct sequel to Persona 5 that was somehow better than I honestly expected.
What?
Persona 5 Strikers plays fantastically, the Muso/Warriors format working surprisingly well with its blend of classic RPG mechanics, while the story somehow holds its own alongside its mainline counterpart in a way that no other spin-off in the series really has. Just like in Persona 5 though, all of these aspects can be best complemented by the dungeon design. In this case being the jails, which are definitely not palaces. This is Koei Tecmo's OC, do not steal! Before people get up in arms about any placements, I need to clarify, I absolutely love every single jail in this game. They each have flaws, but the majority of my experiences with every single one was phenomenal. Trust me, I was beating myself up about the last place ranking because you'll see they're all great. Now then, as to not stall any longer...
Think twice before you pass. Don't expect us to...
Hey, Senorish, what you doing over there?
Oh, I was playing Persona 5 Strikers on Merciless.
Oh yeah? How's that going?
Well... Okay, so this is...
This.
Alright.
That was the jack-o'-lantern.
Shut up. It's really hard.
Well, I'm kind of in the middle of something here, so...
Perfect. I'm joining you.
Well, I guess we've got Senorish tagging along once again to help ease the load here. Anything you'd like to share with the class before we start?
Yeah. Y'all ever heard of a little game called Katawa Shoujo? It's free, and it's the best visual novel ever made.
Okay, cut to the first jail! Hurry, cut to
No,
the first
wait!
jail! Man, there obviously had to be a jail to put in last, and it breaks my heart that it has to be this one. Off the bat, the main theme of this jail, Singularity, is just flat out my favorite song in any of these dungeons. Few locations in the Persona series as a whole have set such a menacing tone quite as well as this one. And that song absolutely runs with that aura in stellar fashion. This jail also marks the exact moment when the actual plot truly kicks off, so it's starkly memorable for that. Though it's also telling of this game's consistency in its writing, as this one ends up suffering a tad due to its brevity mixed with a lack of proper payoff with the boss solely being a warden. Though the idea of a jail having their owner be deceased due to his issues with the project at hand basically leaves us in a mental graveyard, which is a fantastic concept. On the gameplay end is where the last place spot becomes a little more clear. While I absolutely died on the inside giving a low rank to the dungeon where you leap through windows and shatter them in order to ambush your enemies, there are other issues at play. The halls are often a bit thin, making fights kinda cluttered at times as everyone is bunched up together, though my biggest issue here is honestly those dang wires you have to hang from to traverse the place. It genuinely takes forever waiting for them and makes retreading this dungeon an obnoxious task every time. It's also pretty short, though that somewhat ends up being to its detriment, and I kinda wish it was all just touched up a tad. Great dungeon, but the worst of the bunch. But we did get this moment, so it's actually the best in the game.
So shut the fuck up, idiot!
This is where we start getting into the more proper jail formats, and genuinely, I have no real problems with this one. It's only uphill from here with a few downsides, but what keeps this below anyhow? Well, as Natsume is criminal in his use of tropish writing and subpar world building, this somewhat intentionally bleeds into his world. It's often played as a joke to a successful measure, but this joke still leads into the place feeling mostly like a redux of Kamoshida's Palace from P5, if anything else. However, the spotlight on Yusuke's arc is amazing, and the way Natsume's flaws hit Yusuke on a core level are played to a brilliant effect. Beyond that, the way they display Natsume's past is genuinely painful in how the adults in his life utterly used and dismissed him. Then moving forward into his later confession where Yusuke demands he make a comeback and tell stories he's passionate about instead of plagiarizing and just... Man, it's such a good arc, and as a writer it utterly broke me. Natsume's boss fight is also pretty rad, if not simple, being a basic dragon fight with little else to it. Though the bit of his outer appearance being a shell for his inner, sadder self is both unfortunate and unbearably funny to me.
So this is you, huh? Mr. Writer? Wait, what? Oh, God. Alright, gotta tone it down on the on-love a bit. Okay, now that I got that out of my system. Shibuya is the first show of the game, and oh god, where do I even start? Well, not only is this arc a fantastic way to reintroduce us to the thieves, but it's also a fantastic way to introduce us to our new characters and premise for the story. The way we learn about Geos and this new change of heart epidemic immediately grabbed my attention and got me so excited to play this game. But then on top of that, we have Alice, who is just such an amazing villain, and the way she parallels Ann's arc in so many ways is amazing. And it makes me so happy to see my favorite Persona character getting such a strong spotlight. And on top of all that, you have so many amazing memorable moments like meeting Sophia and Zenkichi, or the gold bar scene,
Send the effing thing back!
or meeting Mommy Shadow Alice for the first time, and that amazing calling card that calls back to Shido's calling card, and that fucking incredible diversion that not only makes for an incredible opening set piece the first time you see it, but it's also just such a badass moment when the story loops back around. It's all just so amazing. The only thing left I really have to mention is the gameplay. It's pretty basic stuff, which is to be expected of the tutorial jail, but it's still got some great fights, like the climb up the tower to get to the cage, the fantastic boss fight, and of course, the aforementioned diversion. Such an amazing way to start this amazing game. Also, it's the fucking On arc. Did I forget to mention that?
I just learned I could mute him. Wish I knew that sooner. Next slide! I'm honestly shocked that the final dungeon is placed so low because I can't stress how much I adore this one. Like I said before, this entire ranking was trouble to put together, and I'd considered reasons to place this in first, so let's talk about those positives. The look of this place is super reminiscent of Mementos in the best way possible, whilst also having decor not dissimilar to a certain royal antagonist's spooky tentacles. The music is also fittingly climactic and always gets me amped up for what's coming ahead. Yes, the dungeon is pretty short overall, potentially the shortest in the game, but it gets your heart pumping with some great mini-bosses and preambling fights, and this wacky hallway where I just run at a wall for a bit. Where you going, jokester? Only for it to bring you to fight the Demiurge in all its glory. This fight can only be truly described as awesome in the most literal sense of the word. Imagine taking the Yaldabaoth fight and bam, now it's in a 3D space. This finally gives an opportunity to have every member of the Phantom Thieves join up collectively for a massive battle, and the weight of it hits hard. This two-phase fight, while not excessively difficult, keeps players moving and engaged in a superbly effective way. Absolutely one of, if not the best fight in the game. The story also reaches its closing notes in a successful fashion, even managing to add some sympathy to Emma in a way. Not sure how that was managed, but it was wild. This show is short, sweet, and to the point, but that point is one that's absolutely unforgettable. But who cares about that when you can instead fight a little girl?
Yo, now we're talking.
Apologies for the self-indulgence on that transition slide, but I just love everything about Zenkichi. Oh wait, this isn't even my turn.
Woo boy, where do we start with this one? Well, let's start at the beginning. The thieves have just narrowly escaped being arrested thanks to Zenkichi warning them, which came at the cost of him getting arrested himself. They then get a text saying that Akane's been kidnapped, but it was a trap and everyone except Futaba gets captured by Akane's shadow. Right off the bat, this is such an amazing setup. The group needing to hide away from the police and die at LeBlanc is very reminiscent of the Shido arc in P5, which if you watched our P5R Palace ranking, then you know that's my favorite part of the game, so you can imagine how much I love this. On top of that, this is an amazing moment for Futaba, who has to put her fears aside so she can save her friends because, let's be honest, she's doing this alone. Sure, Zenkichi is coming along after getting out of jail thanks to Sai, but do you really think this guy's gonna help? But this then leads to Zenkichi confronting Shadow Akane in one of the most heart-wrenching scenes in the entire game, as every fuck-up Zenkichi's made is thrown right back at him, which all leads to Zenkichi seeing the error in his ways and finally deciding to rebel against the corrupt system that stopped him from enacting the justice that he's always truly cared about. And then he awakens to his persona, and he has a big-ass sword and revolvers. It's just so fucking cool. In terms of gameplay, this jail is a maze. Ooh. Okay, but seriously, it's not that bad. The game pretty much tells you exactly where to go. The only time you might have trouble is when coming back to do side quests and forget where all the portals go. But as long as you have a better memory than me, which isn't very hard, then you'll be fine. And finally, it's all capped off with my favorite boss in the game because, I mean, just look at this. It's so fucking badass.
You never see it coming. You see that my mind is too fast for life. You're done it. Darling teacher, your life's a ride.
I love this game.
You know, whomever was responsible for writing this game must have really loved Haru, relatable, and that's no more evident than in the jail dedicated to her. Seriously, what a contrast from her own arc being stolen from her in Persona 5, to now getting the spotlight in a way that displays everything that makes her phenomenal with flying colors. Mari is such a good antagonist. Her tragic dilemma and her mistreatment of her workers giving heavy stakes to her character, whilst also giving this close familial tie to Haru in her upbringing. And the way both of them interact is both entirely wholesome and endlessly heartbreaking. The first 3 jails in this game definitely try to cover the moral grayness of people like this, and Mari is one of the best examples offered by a far margin. The structure of this jail is also probably the best executed of the longer dungeons, having an aesthetic that's perpetually appealing, an extremely enjoyable layout to maneuver, and a few gimmicks throughout that keep things feeling fresh, such as the stuff with the heaters, the snowboarding, and I'd probably be exiled from the internet if I didn't mention the He-Horde.
Hee-haw!
Look at them go. Only God and Pepperidge Farms truly know where they're going. Overall though, with some absolutely fantastic music, gameplay, and story writing, this is a clear example of how an arc in this game functions at its finest. Meaning the next 2 jails basically had to blow my mind and stomp on my heart in order to beat it out. I adore Haru though, so let's just pretend that this is number 1 and... No, get that next one out of here! I see you! Get back! Get away!
Man, I really don't know where to even start with this one. Well, how about we start with the main focus of this jail? Kuon Ichinose. God damn, what a character. This creepily upbeat yet seemingly emotionless woman who acts as the perfect antagonist to fight at the end of this game that's been all about the human heart. I've seen her compared to the 3rd semester villain from Royal a lot, and many say that Ichinose is just a worse version of them. However, I'd say that the two are very different once you look past the surface.
The child of the trickster god, Loki.
Was a villain who acted purely out of empathy. Ichinose's actions are due to a seeming lack of empathy. He wanted to fix the world by giving people an easy way to run away from and ignore their problems. Ichinose, on the other hand, wanted to eliminate human hardship altogether by taking away humanity's free will. Both want to eliminate human suffering, but are taking 2 different routes, both of which taking away something that makes us human. Took away people's abilities to learn and grow. Ichinose took away people's ability to make choices and have their own hopes and dreams. Both are super interesting in their own rights for very different, albeit related reasons. But that's just Ichinose. We also got the public being brainwashed into worshipping Emma, and also Emma becoming a god? This is also my favorite looking jail in the game. It's super reminiscent of Memento's Depths, which was one of my favorite areas in P5. But it's also got all the roots growing around everything, which perfectly foreshadows the Tree of Knowledge. Pair all that with some super atmospheric music and Last Surprise Scramble now being used as the main battle theme, and you've got yourself a memorable video game dungeon. And finally, we have Sophia! Yeah, that's what I meant to say. Oh god! This jail perfectly finishes Sophia's arc with some of the most emotional and badass moments in the game. I was on the edge of my seat as she was fighting the group and getting snapped out of her trance when she saw she was hurting Joker. I was rooting for her when she fought against her orders to protect the group from getting killed by that thing from the box art of No Man's Sky. And I was cheering at the screen when she finally got the heart she wanted so badly and awakened to her slightly stupid looking true persona. And the way all of this ties into Ichinose's arc and causes her to reflect, it's just so good. And for one final thing, I just have to give a massive shout out to Megan Taylor Harvey, who's the VA for Sophia. Throughout the game, she gradually starts to sound less and less robotic, which is not only a great call on the director's end, but it all comes together in this amazing moment where she sounds like she's on the edge of tears fighting her programming. And of course, the way she screams... just chills. So good. And the crazy thing is, this isn't even the best part of the game.
I don't think there's anything more fitting than the fact that the theme you begin this jail on is, well, welcome to the jail, solidifying that this is the dungeon meant to define this experience. No, it's not the finale, and it's not as much of an emotional dagger as certain other dungeons, but what it is climactic. And also still an emotional dagger, but we'll get to that. Akira Konoe, whilst being a character we share very little time with, and is also an excuse for me to reign champion over what Joker's canon name is, milks every scene he's in with an undeniable presence. Yes, he's Tony Stark, but he's a dang good Tony Stark. His charisma and drive is already fantastic as characters go, but that ends up being mixed with such an insanely tragic backstory that it challenges the base of the Phantom Thieves' morality in a way that has never been as effectively handled before now. Royal's third semester withstanding, of course. The story has built up this entire conflict as the ultimate clash for the Phantom Thieves as a unit, and is their best hope to resolve the situation at hand. Imagine a Shido level threat, but we actually can sympathize with their past on a core level. That alone is worth a heck of a lot. On the gameplay front, while I wouldn't say it's a far step above Sapporo's in terms of layout, it's about on par. You could argue it's a little more tedious in terms of the enemies you have to face, but overall I'm fine on that front. And I'm vibing out so hard to the music and visuals anyhow that it couldn't help to make a dent on my enjoyment. Plus, we're granted what's potentially the most insane act the Phantom Thieves have ever performed in the real world. Literally hijacking a blimp to make it rain calling cards, and honestly, I couldn't even tell you how they'd manage to top this in the future without something on a worldwide scale. This was just way too cool, and also shockingly funny.
All subsequent references will henceforth be shortened to Party A.
We love you, Zenkichi. And then the boss fight. Man, this boss fight! Rivers in the Desert was already one of my favorite songs of all time, and while this remix isn't quite as good to me, it's still, you know, Rivers in the Desert playing as I fight a giant mech controlled by a dude in Featherman cosplay. But that doesn't even compare to Counter-Strike. Seeing this man in desperation literally rise from the ashes to continue the fight one-on-one is extremely menacing and telling of his determination and ideals. This insanely intense confrontation, placed alongside a conversation that challenges and encapsulates the ideals of the Thieves better than the series ever has before, leaves this explosive battle feeling more memorable than I can even describe. This jail displays what can make a narrative climax so effective, and the execution of it absolutely caused it to swoop into the #1 spot. With all that said, would you have ranked things differently?
I would've.
Feel free to comment what you feel, since this was ridiculously hard to choose between, as I love everything listed here in one way or another. Now, how do I, oh gosh, what's happening? Why is this not again?
That outro was so stupid.
Thank you all so much for watching. I know I always say it means a lot, but here particularly it means way more than most would fathom. I may have gotten my computer entirely wiped a few months back, delaying this from the start of March to now, but it's finally done and I couldn't be happier. If you like content like this, feel free to support my Patreon like these fellows here to help assure that more can come. Otherwise, that's all I've got to say. Stay safe, play Strikers, and subscribe. 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 Subscribe.